What is up, everyone? Welcome to Vibing with G Season 3. For the first time ever, I'm interviewing a Brit and a puppet, Ronnie Le Drew. How are you,
Hi,
Ronnie?
hello.
Fun fact, he was originally born in Toronto.
True?
Yeah. So are you ready for this extravaganza?
I am indeed. Yes, I'm just looking up a picture to show you what age I arrived into London from Canada. Now, if I do this, I'm going to try and do. That's my sister and I on the boat, because it was a boat in those days. And then over here. Oh no, where is it? Oh, that's my father holding the two of us on the boat again. Sorry,
Oh,
it's taken from a book, so they're a bit blurry, but and you can tell I'm on the water. You see, that's why it's all going up and down. Anyway, I don't think that's it for there. So yes, and this was way back in about what year was it? It was in early 50s, I think 52 or something like that. And I was a 3-year-old or something like that. And and the reason why we left Canada, just to fill you in the details, was that my father had trained as a teacher, and he felt that he would like to get an English degree, because an English degree was, I hate to say, but in those days it was felt it was a better degree than the place he came from, which was, of course, Montreal in Canada. But anyway, I shouldn't say that, but I did. Anyway, so we arrived, and he went straight into, to study, really. And he eventually did get an English degree. He ended up being a science teacher. So he was all into science and stuff. I'm completely different from what I, of course, ended up doing. But, there you go. That's the way of the world.
Sweet. Wow. So you're originally born in Toronto. When was the last time you went to Toronto or Canada in general?
Well, in general, I mean, I took, this is now jumping ahead. I think it would have been in the early 80s, I think. I took my mother and my sister for a holiday. We had, I think we had 3 weeks there. And I said, look, Mum, the thing is, it's very weird. All my relations, I mean, the blood relations anyway, most of them are in Canada and all over. And I'd only known them, and because this is sort of in a way before the internet. So my mother was a fantastic airmail letter writer. And so I get sort of, or would be included in my mother's, she was brilliant at correspondence. I hopeless. So, and until the internet. But so before then, I knew these people, we'd get photographs, and these would go back and forth. But I mean, they were just, I hate to say, they weren't real to me, if you know what I mean. But in the end, I said, look, as I'm taking you over, I'll give you 2 weeks, and we'll meet up with all these lovely relatives. In fact, they were very nice, cousins and things like that. But I want a week where I can just go around Toronto and see what I want to do, and that was, that was fine. They were very happy with that. So, whereas it would have been the 80s, I mean, I did things like, mostly in Toronto. I did go to the Canadian Falls. My godfather drove me out, to see the Niagara Canadian, falls out there, and all that was very nice. But I did things like visit the CN Tower, didn't climb up it, sorry, in the lift. And saw that, and that time I think it was the tallest building in the world. I think it's
it was.
Yeah, that's right. And then I went to theatre. I mean, I'm still am quite, mad on theatre. But I also saw, believe it or not, there was a puppet company from Montreal that happened to be playing in one of the theatres. I can't remember the name of the theatre. I think quite a small theatre, but anyway, wonderful. And it was an absolute brilliant company. And so I saw a puppet company. There's also an Ontario Puppetry Association, which I discovered. One thing about Canada and America, I think, is the sort of grid system and the travel. Everything is so much easier. You come to England, it's much more difficult to get around and find places. Whereas, I just got the sort of, what do you call it? The bus to, the nearest subway, and then that took me to What's Name Street, and there was the place. It was really quite easy. So I found it quite easy to get get around. But yeah, I saw some ballet companies. I saw the puppet company. I went to the Ontario Puppetry Association, and I then met up with people there, and we, you know, went off and had coffee and stuff and chatted puppets, which was
Cheerio.
very nice. Yeah, yeah. So that was really good.
Fun. So what or who inspired you to do puppetry?
Okay, well, as a kid, we lived in a flat, a big block of flats in South London, and we had long school holidays. Well, 6 weeks. That seemed to be weeks and weeks and weeks when you're a kid. And I was about 10 or maybe a bit younger, and I was given. Now, I don't know whether you've heard of these puppets. They're called Pelham puppets, and they're marionettes, toy kids ones. And the company was started in 1947 by a man called Bob Pelham, hence
Oh
Pelham
yeah,
puppets.
I know what they are.
I mean, I think they're quite. I mean, they're sort of worldwide now. I mean, they're in fact now collector's items because sadly the company, you know, is no longer. But anyway, at that time, I was given one puppet, a marionette, and I thought, well, this is quite fun. And I started doing shows. And then I think in the end, I had about 4. They're not, I mean, we weren't terribly rich as a family, so they were quite expensive to buy. So I think I ended up having about 4, but I had some glove puppets, you know, the hand puppets. And I had, my sister and I, we had a wind up gramophone, can you believe? That some aunt or somebody, a neighbor had given me, with some old 78 speed records, and we put this on. So there was no electricity. I just put that on the side, so this not sounded record was going. And then I had an upturned table which I put something flat at the bottom for, and I stood and did the marionettes, and then I sort of did glove pose. It was probably the most appalling, terrible show, but I enjoyed doing it. And with the kids from the flats would all come and sit on the next floor. We were on the first floor, so there was a set of stairs going up to the second floor, and they sat on those. So it was like a raked auditorium. They could see quite well. So it all worked quite well. Anyway, that's my start in doing puppets. And then I bought a little toy theatre with my saving, you know, pocket money. You know, I can't remember, I had 6pence or something a week. Anyway, saved up all my pocket money and bought this little Victorian puppet theatre, which is a toy theatre, it's called, and it's the Pollock's Toy Theatres. And in this country, there was a man called Benjamin Pollock, and he, I think just before the First World War, set up these little miniature theatres. And you had, in those days, it was, you could get sheets and you stuck them onto cardboard, and they were either, it was like 2pence coloured and penny plain. So the plain ones you could colour in the little figures, and there were little figures that you cut out after you stuck them on cardboard. You had wires that moved them, and then you had all the scenes and sets and stuff, and they all fitted into this theatre. And I thought this was great. And so I then eventually asked some of the kids to come into my bedroom, because that's where I'd set up this, using the same table, but as a table now, but putting up and I did shows, and I learned a very good lesson, actually. I remember I'd got this, you can get all sorts of different plays and stuff, and I got one, I thought, Hamlet, that'll be it. I mean, I'm talking about a 14-year-old now, you know, think, oh yeah. And anyway, it was obviously a very, very sort of shortened version, but I was doing the scene where Horatio was on the ramparts and the ghost of Hamlet's father comes down, and he was on a string, so you just lowered him down. I was going, I am the ghost. I'm doing all this sort of stuff, having a ball, loving it. And there's about 5 kids. I think you couldn't get any more than that in the bedroom with all my fit up and everything in there. And I did a couple of scenes, did that scene, and I put the curtain down. I thought, they're so quiet, they're wonderful. They might obviously absolutely engrossed. So I had a sort of board that covered me, so you wouldn't see me doing all this. You just saw the little scene. Anyway, I came out from behind there, and the audience, bless them, had crept out, bored out of their minds, and there was nobody left in there. So I thought, lesson. Entertain the audience, don't just entertain yourself. And I thought that was quite a good lesson at 14 to learn, you know, when you're sort of into your own thing. So that's the start of it. And then I also discovered, again, no internet, you can't find things easy. It took a while, but I think it was on the back of the Pollock's Toy Theatre little script thing. There was a thing saying, other organizations that you might be interested in, those sort of puppet things. And one of them was called the British Puppet and Model Theatre Guild. And I thought, oh, what's this? Where's that? And it turned out that there was where they were meeting, which is a place called St. Gabriel's Hall at the time. This is again the sort of it's 60s time, very early 60s. And this was in Vauxhall, and I lived in Stockwell, which is about a bus ride not very far away. So I said to my mum, look, I'm still at school, but I think their meetings were 7 till 9 on a Tuesday or something. And I said, I'd like to go along to this, because it's puppets and stuff. And she said, well, as long as you finish your homework and then get out there. So I, did all that. And I went along and I met a whole lot of different English puppeteers who are obviously members of the guild. And they did always, every Tuesday, they had a sort of different puppeteer, performing or demonstrating this, a making side of puppets or a performance side. And that was great. I mean, it was a rather quirky, funny little old hall, but they had, there was some, I'm mustn't be sexist, but sometimes the wives would make the tea. We'd have a cup of tea and a biscuit or something. It was that sort of thing. And you sit, and there was some seats, and you just sat down and listened. And there was a chairman and various people. And there was a library, which was out of a suitcase. You could borrow books if you will remember, and all that. And I think I became a junior member. I can't remember how much it was. It was old money in those days too, as I call it. We weren't decimalized then. Anyway, I met a few people, and they said that there was also a puppet theatre being, had just opened. So this would have been about 62, that sort of era. 61, actually, this puppet theatre opened, but I didn't know about it till about 62. And anyway, they were all going to go as a group to visit this puppet theatre. I thought, wonderful, I want to join this group. Well, sadly, there wasn't enough room for me to go on the coach at that stage. But one of the puppeteers, Mrs. Murray from Australia, she'd come over to visit, relatives, I suppose, and was also a puppeteer. She said, don't worry, I'll take you one weekend, because they had weekend shows. Oh, nice. And I went along to the Little Angel Theatre, which is the puppet theatre, and it was opened by a man called John Wright, who was the founder director, and born in South Africa. Was a farmer and a painter before he got involved in puppets. And as he said, there wasn't books to tell you how to make puppets or anything in those days. This is way back just before the Second World War. So that's his sort of start. Anyway, he then eventually came over to England. He set up a company. He never did shows on his own. He always had a company. And he eventually came over to England. I think he came over to England the first time just after the war. So, or during the war, I think. And then he went back again. And he came back then for home, for permanency sort of thing, after the war, and set up a studio, which was in Hampstead, which is in North London, not far from Islington, where the Little Angel was. And he had friends. There's a whole artistic community that lived there, and especially during the, sort of after the war and stuff. Anyway, he set up his own theatre. I don't know how many seats it was. It was in the basement of a poet's house, this sort of thing. And he performed shows. Now he, in this time, had also learned how to carve the most beautiful puppets, and they're marionette string puppets. And so he carved these puppets, and he had a set of shows. So, and eventually he thought, look, I'm going to form my own company, my own theatre. And this is what he did. And I think 1959, he was hunting around to find a place, a suitable building, and eventually came to Islington. Now, Islington now is quite posh now, as us English would say. But in those days, it had there was a sort of posh community, but most of it was just sort of regular people like me and everybody. Anyway, and so he found this derelict. It was literally Temperance Hall, which is basically, they were formed, I think, just before the First World War. They were sort of a society that only, anti-alcohol, and they'd just make cups of tea, and, there was probably a religious element in it as well. But anyway, that's what they did. And so this was the Henry Ansell Temperance Hall. But sadly, during the Second World War, a bomb had, there was a church next door, had fallen on the church next door, which was a lovely old, quite a big building, and the church, or the ruins of the church, fell onto the Temperance Hall. I mean, I don't know how it did it, but anyway, and the roof of the Temperance Hall was completely ruined.
Oh,
And so when he saw this structure, let's put it that way, with no roof, he thought this would make an ideal puppet theatre. He managed to find out the owners. At that time, it had been closed for years. And he managed to buy it for an absolute, I mean, it was something, it was just a few £100. I mean, unbelievable. Nowadays, you just wouldn't get anything like that. And he formed a charitable trust to set up the building and get money to set up this puppet theatre. And by 1961, November 1961, he'd got the first part of the theatre built. It was absolutely amazing. He got the charities set up, and a local wood merchants supplied the timber for the new roof. He got various paint companies to help supply money. I mean, he was a brilliant man, as far as, he could organize that sort of thing. He organized the company, had friends to help paint the walls once we, were all there. And in November 1961, he set up, he started his first shows. And I turned up at the theatre in 1964, 63, 64. Whoops. I'll just show you. I'm just going to do that. I hope you can see. So that's John Wright. There's the Little Angel Theatre. There's Lindy, his wife, who's still around. Christopher Leith, the young chap. This is the back row. Christopher Leith is that. Sorry, I'm going to move it like that. There you go. And there's a lovely actress called Joyce Wren. She did lots of voices as well as being part of the company. And that's Mary Kenny. She's now Mary Edwards now. And the young boy in the front is me. I'll try and zoom in. There's a 15-year-old.
Back in the good old days.
Yes, I know. And then this was this is the theatre with the proscenium arch. It's like what we call a letterbox proscenium arch. Sorry, we're not on the sea. It's just my shaky hands.
Don't worry about it.
You can see some puppets behind, and then that's the same company again. We all standing in front. And there's me on the far left there, and the rest of the other, as I said before, the same people. And it was called the Little Angel Theatre because it was near the Angel tube station. So now that's what we call the bridge where we work the string puppets. That's me holding up the Prince puppet, and below, I'll show you one below a bit. But you see the roof, you can see the wooden roof there. This was the original stage and bridge as we had there. And then I think here is John Wright and myself and Lindy. And Lindy's holding Rapunzel, I'm holding the Prince, and John's holding the witch puppet there. And that was up on the bridge.
Lovely.
And I've just got another one now that's me. Somebody took, oops, let's go this way a bit. There you are. Me backstage. Now you're probably wondering what have I got in my, sorry, let's get it there. Sorry,
it looks
there
like
are
a microphone.
Well, it looks like a microphone. It's actually a rubber tube, and that's the turtle. He swam. This is a story of the Little Mermaid, by the way, from this photograph. So if you know the Disney version, it's similar to that, although we actually did the Hans Andersen original story, so it's a bit sadder than the Disney one. No, that's that one. Anyway, why I've got that tube, I better explain it because it is a bit strange. I had a rubber tube that I put in my mouth, and I had a cigarette in the other hand. I wasn't a smoker, but it was for a special effect. There was the sea witch scene, and there was this wonderful bowl in the middle of the stage. And on the bottom of the stage, there was a hole, and the rubber tube was fitted to that. So, and there was a hole in the bottom of the bowl. And there was a red light under this bowl, and the sea witch was, doing a spell saying, yes, we'll change you into we'll give you legs to, and then you can meet this prince. Anyway, and I was the one who was blowing down the tube with the,
oh my goodness,
blowing all this smoke, and the smoke bubbled out. And it really worked. It was absolutely brilliant with the lights. And then, at the very end, I had to keep doing this with the cigarette through the whole of the scene. And then all the lights went down, and all you saw was the red light in the bowl and the witch's head. It was quite scary, but really theatrical, and this cigarette smoke, coming out. So that was one of my first jobs. Anyway, I have jumped ahead there, but I just wanted to show you those pictures. But what happened was I eventually went to see, and the show was The Little Mermaid with this Australian puppeteer. And I just fell in love with the theatre. I thought, oh, this is amazing. And the show was absolutely beautiful. Very theatrical, beautiful lighting, lovely music, and these amazing puppets. Anyway, I went along for a couple of weekends to sort of just to be around and, I don't know, they let me sort of volunteer to show people to their seats or something like that, that sort of thing. And I got speaking to the rest of the company and everything. And eventually I wrote a letter to John Wright saying, would it be okay if I could join your company? And he said, well, come along and we'll have a proper chat, blah, blah. So I did that. Now, at the same time, I just said to my school, which was, sort of senior school, I said, I will stay on and take some exams. Because I was doing that really for my father, really. I think he wanted me to, get a good, well, I don't know about getting a degree, but I wouldn't have got that, but I was taking these exams. Anyway, I then said, actually, I don't want to do that. I don't want to stay on. Now, in those days, in my youth, you could leave at 15, can you believe? So, and I did leave school at 15 because what happened was I went to see John, and John said, look, yes, you seem to be, absolutely fine. You can join us. We like you. The only thing is there's one reservation. We can't pay you because we just don't have enough money in the company. We just started the theatre review. And so therefore it'll be for services you do rented to the theatre, basically. So I thought, that's fine, absolutely fine. No thought about how I was going to survive or anything. Anyway, I get back, speak to my parents, and of course my father being the sort of bit more, sort of foreknowing, wondering what was going on. And he said, so how much will they be paying you? And I said, oh, they won't be paying me. Oh, no. I'm just going to go there and I'm going to learn everything about puppetry, and that will be it. Well, my father, of course, took a deep breath, said, Edna, my mother's name, into the kitchen they went. And I thought they were there having a discussion about my future for about, it felt like 3 hours, but of course it was about 5 minutes or less than that. Anyway, they came out of the room, and my mother had a twinkle in her eye, and she said, well, we've decided we'll give you 3 months to see whether you like working at the puppet theatre, but also 3 months for the puppet theatre company to decide whether they can cope with you. So in all, I had like a 6 months trial period from my parents, which was fantastic. And so I joined the Little Angel in 1964, I think, something like that. And I did 6 months, and then I actually did 8 months originally. But sadly, my father died when after about the 6 months period. So and they kind of gave me £2 a week. Now £2 was worth a bit more then than it is now. I mean, it wouldn't get you a bus. Well, I think it does one bus fare or something. Anyway, now, but I mean, that was it. But so I managed to stay on a bit longer. And I really, it's a bit like joining a rep theatre in, I'm assuming you have rep theatres in Canada, but where, you join as a young member, you probably do stage management, and then you do a few acting parts, and then and if you're really good, you get a good part in, and you continue doing different plays, because the theatre has, a group of actors. In this case, it was puppeteers that, stayed on. And that's what I did. I started sweeping the floor, making the coffee, showing people their seats, doing the props, as you saw that with the old hose, but not every show was slightly different. And then gradually I went up onto the bridge and worked a marionette. But, in the off times when the shows weren't on, I was up there learning how to work these things. And so I was there for 8 months, which was fantastic initially. And then John Wright then said, look, I'm terribly sorry, but we really can't afford even to pay you £2 a week. You'll have to find some, other employment. Well, by that time, I'd still been going to this puppet guild, and I'd met other puppeteers, and there was a puppet company called the Hogarth Puppets, and they were very famous in this country at the time. They're a husband and wife team. Jan Bussell was the husband, and Anne Hogarth was his wife, and they had hence the name, the Hogarth Puppets. And they had a famous puppet that was on television, excuse me, during the, it started in 1946 and went on till 1955. And the character was called Muffin the Mule. And now over here, now there's me in the sort of light blue t-shirt holding a dragon puppet. Jan Bussell is the guy leaning against the Puccini March there. His wife, Anne, is sort of with a yellow blouse on. And then the guy sitting on the floor there is an Australian puppeteer who also helped. We were doing stage management, basically, for the show, because Anne and Jan did the most of it. And he was the guy sitting on the floor is a man called Richard Bradshaw. And he is a famous Australian shadow puppeteer. I mean, he was we're all young then, so he'd set up his own company by then, but it was sort of, he got really famous. In fact, he was asked to be in Jim Henson's World of Puppets, I think it was a series, and he was one of the puppeteers interviewed by Jim. I mean, he's really good. And the guy with the white shirt on, leaning next to Anne, is a man called John Blundell. Now, I mean, he's famous for making puppets for the English company called Jerry Anderson, who made the Thunderbirds and Stingray and all those amazing shows. And John, I met at the Guild, Puppet Guild, and we became friends because he was like younger than some of the other puppeteers. I don't know what, you know, I mean, it's very nice having older puppeteers around, but he was a bit younger. Anyway, so he introduced me to all sorts of other theatre stuff as well, John. He was like a mentor. And also he introduced me to a couple called Violet Philpott and A.R. Philpott. Well, he was known in his theatre name was, or stage name, I should say, it was Panto Puck, and he did glove puppet shows. And I eventually did my own glove puppet show with their help, and that was wonderful. But I'll just show you, there's a picture there. That's me, is slightly older there, but with Muffin. That was the famous puppet that was on English television. He became the first English television puppet icon, if you like. You know, he was, they had Muffin, you could buy Muffin toys and Muffin jigsaw puzzles and all sorts. That was these are just old pictures. That's the caravan all set up. We used to go to parks all over London and do 3 shows a day in a different park. And that was I think that was Kensington Gardens. That was a bit posh, but and then that's the caravan without, you know, not set up, ready to be towed away. And I don't know whether there is a picture. Oh yes, you may just see. Yes, you can just see the Jeep.
Yeah, I see.
There.
Yeah, I see it.
And it was sort of that pulled. We all sat in the back of the Jeep or whatever, you know, and moved on to the next. But that was fantastic, you know, fantastic experience. I then went on to do other work with other companies, and then by about I think 1969 to 70, or during that year, I moved. Fun enough, John Blundell had set up his own company in Birmingham. He'd left Jerry Anderson stuff, and he formed a company. Had asked me if I would join him. So that was the Midlands Arts Centre, and it was the puppet company there. And he formed his own company, and I joined him there for a year. And then I went back to the Little Angel Theatre after that year, because they'd in that time had set up or got some money from a charitable trust called the Michael Marks Charitable Trust. And he was a man whose father set up Marks and Spencer's, a very big English firm, but, you know, set of shops are all over the country. Anyway, so there was some money granted, and we had the extension to the theatre. The backstage area was much bigger. We had 2 bridges for the marionettes to work on. We had, we could use a whole lot more, as we had a lot more space, we used all sorts of different puppets as well as the marionettes. So yeah, it was really, you know, really quite exciting. And I stayed really with the company. We toured all over the world, actually. I mean, I've been very lucky doing with the Little Angel, particularly. We toured most of Europe. We toured most of England. We never went to Ireland, which is a shame. I'm dying to go to Ireland. I'd love to go there. But we went all over Scotland, all over the country. But Europe was Germany, France. You know, we even went to Denmark for a month, played there. We went to Israel, which was wonderful, toured all over Israel, which was amazing. We also went to America, to the Puppeteers of America Festival. This was about 1981. I think I might be wrong. I'm so bad on the years. And that was the Michigan, it was in Michigan, and it was a huge university complex. And we had bikes to get around to various places. They always gave us, so we biked our way around, which is great, great fun. And then we went to Detroit, which is not far. And we went, there's a fantastic Detroit, I think it's called it's the Museum of Arts and sort of, or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
And in there was a fantastic puppet collection. And because John Wright was established puppeteer, I mean, Jim Henson was at this festival, all sorts of, Bill Baird, who used to do the, well, he did do the puppets on The Sound of Music, the Lonely Goatherd puppets. So Bill Baird was alive then. So that was wonderful to see him do a little bit. And all sorts of other American, Bert Tillstrom, another American puppeteer, you know, Kukla and Ollie, is it? Oh, I've forgotten the name of the famous puppets. Anyway, he was there. I mean, it was amazing. Anyway, we went off to Detroit and saw this wonderful exhibition of puppets. And as I say, John was sort of well known at that stage. So we were able to go into the sort of storeroom, as it were, and they pulled out drawers and there was wonderful puppets there. So that was a fantastic experience. But by the time, I suppose I stayed with the company full time till about 1972. And I then got a phone call from a friend who said, look, we've got this television program and you'll be interested to, I'm sure, but I can't carry on working the puppet that on the program, and I'm going to recommend you. And I thought, fantastic. So I went along, had a lunch with the producer and met the cast, who I knew the other puppeteer on the program anyway. She was a puppeteer that had worked with me at the Little Angel, and she walked, and I knew about this program, and it was called Rainbow. It's a preschool program, and basically we'd had Sesame Street over here, but you know, I think it came over in 79 or something. I can't, no, talking rubbish. But I think it started in 69, didn't it? I think I'm so bad on the years, but we had it. It was shown over here for about 2 years on Channel 4, but not on the BBC. But the educational people said, "Oh, I'm afraid the spellings are all wrong. You know, they don't spell English correctly, and the pronunciation of some of the things." So I think the television companies ought to make their own preschool program. And that's what we did. We didn't. The finance was never given to like they have for the Sesame Street. I mean, it wasn't. You know, there wasn't big studios. We tended to be, children's programs always usually in a small studio or something. Anyway, same thing happened, but we had Rainbow, so we had 2 puppets. Well, in fact, there was 4 puppets originally. But
Zippy, George.
2. Zippy, George, and Bungle was the bear, and I can show you there. I don't know whether I can show you I'm just looking in my book to see if there's a picture. Zippy, George, and Bungle. Bungle was a skin costume, was a teddy bear, was an actor, a smaller actor inside. And then there was the 2 puppets, Zippy, and the Zippy was the one I worked with, hence he's sitting there waiting to do his thing. And then I'll just see if I can show you. These are like rough pictures, but that's Jeffrey, the presenter, and me, you know, sort of with Zippy over the window in the set. And there's me, whoopsie, sorry, it's a bit blurry. There's George, and that was taken. We were in Hyde Park. I think it was called the Greatest Children's Party or something like that. And the company, Thames Television, set up their sort of, a big marquee actually. And the Rainbow set was put in there, and Her Majesty the Queen came along. Ooh. And we had a competition, and the little boy presented a picture of the Queen. You know, it was a competition to paint a picture of the Queen. She was given the painting and then went away and everything and all that. So we were all standing there with our puppets, and that was quite an occasion. But I also used Zippy for opening fates and seeing. That was me at a school, I think, with Zippy.
Wow.
And that's that's not Zippy. That was my glove puppet show in a library. That was one of my puppets there. So it's quite sweet with all the kids surrounding. Happens to be on that thing. Here you are. There's Zippy in the library with a whole load of kids around. Which is quite cute. Sweet. And then there's another one, bearded then, and with Rainbow. And I think that was opening a school fete or something. Yeah. The puppet, you know, the program became really popular. and I mean, it's that popular that it went on for 20 years. So I suppose that's not bad, really.
Yeah.
And so really that's it in a nutshell. But while I was doing Rainbow, I also worked with Jim Henson. He'd already made Dark Crystal, the movie, and he'd made one Muppet movie over in this country. Loved working over here. I think he found the technicians a bit more obliging, I think, or something, I don't know. But he loved being in England. He bought a house in Hampstead,